The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped between the electric bill and a flyer for the local hardware store. Miguel Alvarez almost missed it. The cream-colored envelope was so pristine, it looked like it belonged in someone else's mailbox. His name was written in elegant calligraphy across the front. Mr. Miguel Alvarez. Not Dad or Papa, like Isabella used to write on Father's Day cards. Just his formal name, as if they were strangers conducting business. He opened it carefully, his weathered fingers leaving slight smudges on the pristine paper. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing the reach. And if this story has you hooked, hit subscribe now. A new one's coming tomorrow, so don't miss it. Let's continue. The invitation was heavy, expensive, the kind of cardstock that whispered money. Gold-embossed letters announced Isabella Navarro's engagement to Jonathan Michael Pierce III. Miguel had to read the name twice. He'd never heard the 3 part. The 4 dot at the bottom in smaller but equally elegant font. 3 words made his chest tighten. Asterisk adults only celebration. Cocktail attire requested. Asterisk Miguel set the invitation on his kitchen table, the same scarred oak table where Isabella had done homework while he worked double shifts at the construction site, where she'd practiced spelling words aloud while he made dinner with whatever was in the refrigerator, where she'd cried over her first heartbreak at 16 while he made her midnight grilled cheese sandwiches and listened to her pour out her heart. The table had seen 32 years of fatherhood. Coffee rings from early mornings when he'd review her school projects before heading to work. Crayon marks from when she was small enough to need a phone book to reach her plate. Homework assignments he'd helped with even when the math was beyond his education, sitting beside her with a furrowed brow and determination to figure it out together. Now it held an invitation that felt like a polite dismissal. Miguel walked to his refrigerator and stared at the photo collage Isabella had made him 3 Christmases ago. Pictures spanning her entire life. Her first day of kindergarten, clutching his hand with a gap-toothed smile. Her high school graduation, where she'd insisted he sit in the front row, despite his protests that he'd be more comfortable in the back. Her college graduation, where she'd found him in the crowd of thousands and mouthed, "I love you, Dad," before accepting her diploma. In every photo, she was looking at him with pure adoration. When had that changed? The phone rang, startling him from his thoughts. Isabella's number flashed on the screen. "Dad, you got the invitation." "I did." His voice came out steadier than he felt, a skill learned from years of delivering bad news to construction clients about budget overruns and delays. "Good. I wasn't sure. I wanted to call first, but Jonathan said it was better to just send them all at once." She was talking fast, the way she used to when she was nervous about a test or a presentation. "It's very fancy," Miguel said, running his thumb along the embossed edge. "Jonathan's mother planned most of it. She knows about these things proper. Protocol and all that." There was something in Isabella's voice he couldn't quite place. Distance? Embarrassment? "Look, Dad, about the party. Jonathan's family is different from us. They have certain expectations about these kinds of events." Miguel felt a familiar knot forming in his stomach, the same one he'd carried to every parent-teacher conference, every school function where he was surrounded by parents in suits while he wore his best shirt from Walmart. What kind of expectations? "It's at the Riverside Country Club. There's going to be networking, business talk, people from Jonathan's firm. His father is introducing him to some important clients." She paused. "You wouldn't be comfortable there anyway. You always say you hate those kinds of things." Miguel looked around his modest apartment, the same 2-bedroom he'd kept after the divorce 10 years ago, choosing to stay in Isabella's school district rather than find somewhere better he could afford. The walls were covered with her achievements. Honor roll certificates from elementary school. Newspaper clippings from when she made Dean's List. A framed photo from when the local paper featured her promotion to marketing director at Pinnacle Communications. Isabella, he said carefully. Are you saying you don't want me there? I'm saying it might be easier for everyone if maybe we could celebrate separately. Just us. Like we used to. When we were poor, you mean? Dad, please don't make this about money. Then what is it about? The silence stretched between them, filled with everything they weren't saying. Miguel could hear traffic in the background. Isabella was probably walking to her car after work, heading to her sleek apartment in the downtown district he'd helped build, but couldn't afford to live in. It's about fitting in, she said finally. Jonathan's family, they don't understand our situation. Our situation. You know what I mean. He did know. He was the construction worker father who embarrassed the marketing executive daughter. The man who still pronounced certain words with the slight accent of his childhood, who wore his one good suit to church and job interviews, who had calloused hands and simple dreams. The man who had raised a daughter so far above his station that she could no longer see him clearly from where she stood. I raised you, Mia, he said, using the endearment he'd called her since she was born. I worked 3 jobs to pay for your college. I drove you to every internship interview in that old truck that broke down twice because I couldn't afford repairs. I know that, Dad. I'm grateful, you know I am. But this isn't about the past. This is about my future. And I'm not part of that future. That's not what I said. Then what are you saying? Isabella's voice cracked slightly. I'm saying that Jonathan's family has concerns about compatibility. They want to make sure we're building something that will last. And that means considering all the factors that could impact our success as a couple. Miguel sat down heavily. At his kitchen table, the invitation crinkling slightly under his elbow. Your mother would have wanted to be there, he said quietly. The silence that followed was so long he thought she might have hung up. Mum's gone, Dad, Isabella whispered. She's been gone for 10 years, and she's not here to help me navigate this. I'm here. I know. But it's different now. Everything is different. After she hung up, Miguel sat in his chair, the worn recliner. Isabella had bought him for Father's Day 5 years ago, back when she still called every Sunday to tell him about her week. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos, a habit he'd developed in the years since Isabella's visits became less frequent. There she was in her graduation cap and gown, arms wrapped around his neck as they posed for pictures. Her face was radiant with joy and pride, and she was looking at him like he'd hung the moon. There was another from her first day at Pinnacle Communications, where she'd called him from the office lobby just to share her excitement. I did it, Dad. I really did it. And it's all because you never let me quit on anything. When had that changed? When had his love become something to be managed rather than celebrated? Miguel couldn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about the invitation, about the careful distance in Isabella's voice, about all the ways he'd apparently failed to prepare her for the world she now inhabited. At 3 a.m., he gave up on sleep and made coffee, settling at his kitchen table with a shoebox he hadn't opened in years. Inside were all the remnants of Isabella's childhood. Report cards, school photos, handmade Father's Day cards with crooked hearts and I love you, Daddy, written in purple crayon. He pulled out card from when she was 8, the year after her mother died. The front showed a stick figure man in a hard hat next to a stick figure girl with pigtails. Inside, in her careful second-grade handwriting, my dad is the best dad because he builds houses and he built our family too. He makes me feel safe and strong. Happy Father's Day to my hero. Miguel remembered that day clearly. Isabella had been so proud of the card, presenting it to him over breakfast with a ceremony that included a formal bow. He'd hung it on the refrigerator immediately, where it stayed until she turned 13, and asked if he could maybe put some of the kid stuff away, because her friends might see it. He should have known then that she was beginning to see their life through other people's eyes. The next morning, Miguel arrived at the Hendersons' house for what should have been a routine kitchen renovation. Daniel Cortez, his business partner for the past 15 years, was already there measuring cabinets. "You look like hell," Daniel said without preamble. "Isabella call?" Miguel had told Daniel about the engagement but hadn't mentioned the party situation. Now, standing in someone else's beautiful kitchen, surrounded by the kind of luxury that Isabella had grown accustomed to, the whole story came pouring out. Daniel listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or shaking his head. When Miguel finished, Daniel set down his measuring tape and leaned against the granite countertop. "You know what your problem is, hermano. You did too good a job." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You raised her so well that she doesn't remember what it was like before. She doesn't remember eating cereal for dinner because you spent the grocery money on her school supplies. She doesn't remember you sleeping on the couch for 2 years because you gave her the bedroom. She just remembers the end result: college, career, success. And now she thinks that success came from some magical place that doesn't include you." Miguel ran his hand along the expensive countertop. "Maybe she's right. Maybe I don't belong in that world." "Bullshit," Daniel said firmly. "You know who built half the buildings in this city? US. You know who made it possible for kids like Isabella to even dream of working in those fancy offices? US. We didn't just build the buildings, Miguel. We built the foundation for their dreams. But I'm not educated like them. I don't know about wine and business, and you know about work. You know about sacrifice. You know about love that doesn't quit even when it gets hard. That's worth more than all their fancy degrees and country club memberships." Daniel picked up his tools. "Your daughter is forgetting where she came from. But that doesn't mean you should forget who you are." That afternoon, Miguel drove past Isabella's apartment complex, a sleek high-rise with a doorman and valet parking. He didn't stop, just slowed down enough to see her BMW in the parking garage, the one she'd bought with her first big promotion. He remembered how excited she'd been to show it to him, how she'd insisted on taking him for a drive through the neighborhoods where she'd grown up. "Look how far we've come, Dad," she'd said, and at the time he'd felt nothing but pride. Now, he wondered if she meant how far she'd come from him. His phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. "Dad, I know our conversation yesterday was difficult. Can we have dinner this weekend? I want to explain things better." Miguel stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Of course, Mia. You picked the place." Her reply came quickly. "How about that little Mexican place on 5th Street? The one we used to go to?" The fact that she called it that little Mexican place, instead of Abuela Rosa's, where the owner had known Isabella since she was 5, and still asked about her every time. Miguel went in alone, told him everything he needed to know about how she saw their shared past now. But he texted back, "Sounds perfect. #. Chapter 3. Dinner and Isabella Rosa's hadn't changed in 20 years. The same red vinyl booths, the same hand-painted murals of Mexican villages, the same smell of cumin and garlic that had made Isabella close her eyes in bliss when she was a child. Miguel arrived 15 minutes early and sat in that old booth there. Corner one where Isabella used to spread out her work while they waited for their food. Rosa herself appeared at his table, her grey hair pulled back in the same neat bun she'd worn for decades. "Miguel, where is my Isabella? It's been too long since I see her." "She's coming, Rosa. She's been busy with work." Rosa's knowing look suggested she understood more than Miguel was saying. She's getting married, no. I heard from Mrs. Mendoza. At the market. Yes, she's engaged. And you're happy? Miguel considered the question. I want her to be happy. That's not what I asked, Mio. Before Miguel could respond, Isabella walked through the door. She was dressed in what she probably considered casual dark jeans that cost more than Miguel spent on groceries in a month, a silk blouse, heels that clicked against the worn linoleum. She looked beautiful, successful, and completely out of place. Rosa hurried over to greet her with the enthusiastic embrace of someone who had fed Isabella countless meals and listened to countless stories about school and friends and dreams. Isabella, you look so fancy, like a movie star. Isabella hugged Rosa politely but briefly, her eyes already scanning the restaurant as if cataloguing all the ways it didn't measure up to the places she frequented now. Hi Rosa, it's good to see you. I bring you your favorite, the enchiladas with extra cheese, like when you were little. Actually, I'm trying to eat less dairy these days. Could I just have a salad? Rosa looked confused. A salad? But you used to say my enchiladas were better than your abuela's, may she rest in peace. Things change, Isabella said with a tight smile. People's tastes evolve. Miguel watched this exchange with a growing heaviness in his chest. This was the same girl who used to beg him to bring her here for her birthday every year, who used to save her allowance to buy Rosa a Christmas present, who used to practice her Spanish with the elderly customers because she wanted to make sure she never forgot her heritage. They ordered Miguel getting his usual combination plate, Isabella settling for a small salad and water, and sat in the booth where they'd shared hundreds of meals. The silence stretched between them until Isabella finally spoke. Dad, about the engagement party. I need you to understand that this isn't personal. How is it not personal? You're my daughter. This is your engagement. How much more personal could it be? Isabella set down her water glass and looked directly at him for the first time since arriving. Jonathan's father is a partner at one of Komanov, the most prestigious law firms in the state. His mother sits on the boards of 3 major charities. The people at this party are going to be ... influential, important. And I'm not. You're important to me, but you're not important to them. And their opinion matters for Jonathan's career, for our future. Miguel felt something break inside him, not snap, but crumble slowly, like mortar giving way after years of weather. Isabella, do you remember what you used to tell people when they asked what your father did? She shifted uncomfortably. That was different. I was a kid. You used to say your dad built the whole world. You'd point to buildings downtown and tell your friends, my daddy helped make that. You were proud. I was 6 years old. You were 12 when you told your teacher that your father was a construction worker, and you were going to be one too someday. You said we were a team. Isabella's composure cracked slightly. I grew up, Dad. I learned that there are different kinds of success, different ways to contribute to society. And my way isn't good enough anymore. Your way was perfect for me then. But I'm not that little girl anymore, and I can't keep living like I am. Rosa appeared with their food, setting down Miguel's steaming plate and Isabella's sparse salad. With visible disappointment, she hesitated, clearly sensing the tension, then patted Miguel's shoulder gently before retreating. You know, Miguel said, cutting into his enchilada, your mother used to worry about this. Isabella looked up sharply. About what? About you getting so focused on climbing up that you'd forget to look back. She used to say, Miguel, we need to make sure our daughter knows that success isn't just about where you end up, but about who you bring with you. Isabella's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back quickly. Don't use Mom against me. I'm not using her against you. I'm using her for you. She loved you so much, Isabella, but she also loved who you were when you were with us. She was proud of your ambition, but she was prouder of your heart. My heart hasn't changed. Hasn't it? Miguel reached across the table and touched her hand. When's the last time you came here just because you wanted to? When's the last time you called just to talk? Not because you needed something or had news to share. Isabella pulled her hand away. I've been busy building a life. What kind of life? One where your father is an embarrassment. Where you have to hide where you came from. I'm not hiding anything. I'm just adapting. Growing. Isn't that what you wanted for me? To have opportunities you never had. I wanted you to have choices. But I also wanted you to choose love over fear. Isabella stared at her barely touched salad. Jonathan loves me. Does he love all of you? Or just the parts that fit his family's expectations? The question hung in the air between them. Isabella opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Finally, she said, You wouldn't understand. You've never had to navigate these kinds of social situations. Miguel sat back in the booth, feeling older than his 55 years. You're right. I haven't. I spent my whole life in one world, our world, making sure you could enter theirs. But I never thought that meant you'd have to leave ours completely behind. They finished the meal in relative silence, making small talk about work and the weather. When the check came, Isabella reached for it. But Miguel was faster. I can pay for my own dinner, Dad. I know you can. But you're still my daughter. And I'm still your father. As they stood to leave, Rosa appeared again, pressing a to-go container into Isabella's hands. For later, Mia. In case you get hungry. For real food. Isabella took the container with a reluctant smile. Thank you, Rosa. In the parking lot, they stood awkwardly beside their cars, his 15-year-old Ford pickup and her pristine BMW. Dad, Isabella said finally, I know this is hard, but I need you to trust me. This is what's best for my future. Your future, Miguel repeated. What about our future? What about the relationship we've had for 32 years? That doesn't have to change, doesn't it? When's the next time I'll see you after this party I'm not invited to? Christmas? Easter? Or just when you need something? Isabella's composure finally cracked. That's not fair. Neither is being ashamed of your father. She got into her car without another word. But Miguel could see her crying as she drove away. He sat in his truck for a long time, holding the steering wheel and wondering how the little girl who used to build sandcastles with him at the beach had learned to build such high walls around her heart. 3 weeks passed without a word from Isabella. Miguel threw himself into work, taking on extra projects and staying late at job sites to avoid the quiet of his apartment. Daniel watched him with growing concern, but said nothing until Miguel nearly fell off a ladder due to exhaustion. That's it, Daniel said, climbing down from the roof they were repairing. We're talking. About what? About how you're killing yourself over something that isn't your fault. They sat on the tailgate of Miguel's truck, drinking water and looking out at the city skyline. Half the buildings in view bore some mark of their work foundations. They'd poured, walls they'd framed, roofs they'd repaired. You see that office building? Daniel pointed to a gleaming tower downtown. The one with all the glass? Pinnacle Communications. Isabella works there. That's right. And you see who built that foundation? We did. You and me and the crew. We were there for 3 months, working in mud and rain, making sure that building would stand strong for 50 years. Miguel nodded, unsure where this was going. Now Isabella works on the 20th floor, making good money, using her education to help businesses grow. And that's beautiful, Hermano. But she couldn't do any of that if we hadn't built that foundation first. The foundation doesn't get to go to the fancy parties on the 20th floor, but without it, there is no 20th floor. Your point? My point is that foundations don't need recognition to know their worth, and daughters don't need to understand their fathers to be grateful for them, even when they forget. Miguel was quiet for a long moment, then said, "She used to bring me drawings of buildings she was going to design someday. Said we'd be partners, she'd design them and I'd build them. Maybe she still needs you to build them, just in a different way." That evening, Miguel was fixing a leaky sink for Mrs. Chun, his elderly neighbor, when his phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. "Dad, can you come over? It's important." He found her apartment door slightly ajar, which was unlike her. Isabella was always careful about security, a habit he'd instilled in her from childhood. He knocked and called out before entering. He found her on her balcony, still in her work clothes but disheveled in a way he'd never seen. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged, and the engagement ring was gone from her finger. She was holding what looked like a legal document. "Isabella, what happened?" She looked up at him with the same eyes that used to search for him in the stands at her softball games, in the audience at school plays, at every moment that mattered. "He wanted me to sign a prenup," she said, her voice flat with exhaustion. Miguel sat beside her in the other patio chair, waiting. Not just any prenup, one that included clauses about maintaining appropriate family associations and upholding social standards befitting the Pierce family name. Miguel felt his jaw tighten. "What does that mean?" Isabella laughed, but there was no humor in it. "It means Jonathan's father had his lawyer's draft language that would legally require me to distance myself from anything or anyone that might hurt Jonathan's political aspirations." Political aspirations? Apparently Jonathan is being groomed to run for district attorney in a few years. His father thinks having the right kind of wife, with the right kind of family, will be crucial for his campaign. Miguel reached over and took the document from her hands. The legal language was dense, but he could make out enough to understand. There were clauses about public appearances, social media posts, family events, even charitable associations. "They specifically mentioned you, Dad," Isabella continued. "Said having a construction worker father-in-law might send the wrong message to voters about Jonathan's understanding of economic development and urban planning." The words hit Miguel like a physical blow, but he kept his expression steady. "And? What did you say?" "At first, I said I needed time to think about it, that Jonathan ... He seemed surprised that I wasn't just signing it immediately. He said it was standard for people in his position, that his mother had signed something similar when she married his father." Isabella pulled her knees up to her chest, looking younger than she had in years. "Then tonight, we went to dinner with his parents to discuss wedding plans, and his mother started talking about the guest list, about how they needed to be strategic about invitations. She said the wedding should be seen as a networking opportunity, that every seat should serve a purpose. And when I asked about inviting Rosa, you remember Rosa from the restaurant? His mother looked at me like I'd suggested inviting a homeless person. She said, 'Darling, I'm sure your little ethnic friends are very sweet, but we need to think about the optics.'" Miguel felt his anger rising, but he kept his voice gentle. "What did you do?" "I excused myself to go to the bathroom. And while I was there, I heard them talking about me. Jonathan's father was saying that I was project material, that with the right guidance, I could be shaped into an appropriate political wife." His mother agreed. Said I had good raw materials but needed significant refinement. Isabella's voice cracked. "They were talking about me like I was a house that needed renovation. Like everything I am, everything I came from, was just something to be fixed or hidden away." Isabella ... That the worst part wasn't what they said about me. It was what Jonathan said. She looked at Miguel with tears in her eyes. His father asked if he was sure he wanted to take on a project this big. And Jonathan said, "Don't worry. Isabella's already proven she knows how to leave her past behind when it serves her interests. She's been distancing herself from her family for months." The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sounds of traffic and construction. The city continuing to build and grow while their world felt like it was crumbling. "I realized he was right," Isabella whispered. "I had been doing exactly that. I'd been so eager to fit into their world that I'd been systematically erasing everything that made me who I am. Including you." Miguel wanted to say something comforting, something that would ease her pain, but he also needed her to understand the full weight of what had happened. "So what did you do?" "I went back to the table and told them I needed to discuss something with Jonathan privately. We went outside, and I asked him point blank, 'Do you love me, or do you love the person you think you can turn me into?' And he said he loved my potential, that he could see the woman I could become with the right support and guidance. When I asked what was wrong with the woman I am now, he said nothing was wrong with me, but that everyone could use improvement." Isabella stood up and leaned against the balcony railing, looking out at the city lights. "That's when I knew I had to choose. I could sign their prenup, let them mold me into whatever shape they wanted, and have the life they thought I should want. Or I could remember who raised me to be stronger than that. And you chose. I chose you, Dad. I chose us. I chose the woman who was raised by a man who taught her that love doesn't come with conditions, that family isn't something you're ashamed of, and that success means nothing if you have to destroy yourself to achieve it." Miguel stood and wrapped his arms around his daughter, holding her while she cried against his chest the way she had when she was small and the world felt too big and complicated. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I got so caught up in being someone I thought I needed to be, that I forgot who you raised me to be. I forgot that you didn't sacrifice everything for me to become someone else's idea of perfect. You sacrificed so I could become my own idea of enough." Miguel held her tighter, feeling pieces of his broken heart slowly fitting back together. "You don't need to apologize to me, Mia. You need to apologize to yourself. And then you need to remember what your mother always said." "What?" "That the only approval you need is your own. And that the people who love you will love you exactly as you are." They stood together on the balcony as the sun set over the city. Miguel had helped build, brick by brick, beam by beam. In the distance, construction cranes moved like gentle giants against the sky, reaching upward but anchored by strong foundations. "Dad?" Isabella said after a long while. "Yes? I want to start over. Not with everything, but with us. I want to remember how to be your daughter again, not just the successful woman who happens to share your DNA." Miguel smiled, the kind of smile that starts small and grows until it takes over your whole face. "You never stopped being my daughter, Isabella. You just forgot how much that meant to both of us." The next morning, Miguel woke to find Isabella asleep on his couch, wrapped in the same blanket she'd claimed as her favorite when she was 12. She'd asked to stay the night, saying she didn't want to be alone in her apartment with all the reminders of Jonathan and the life she'd almost chosen. He made coffee quietly, the way he used to when she was in high school, and stayed up late studying. When she woke, her hair was messy and her makeup was completely gone, and she looked more like his daughter than she had in years. "Morning, Dad." "Morning, Mia. Coffee." "Please." She stretched and sat up, wincing slightly. "Your couch is not as comfortable as I remembered. It's the same couch. You've just gotten used to fancier things." Isabella looked at him sharply, then realized he was teasing. Fair point. Though in my defense, I'm also 32 now instead of 16. They drank their coffee in comfortable silence, watching the morning news. When a story came on about a new housing development across town, Isabella pointed at the screen. Asterisk. Didn't you work on that project? Daniel and I built the model homes. The ones they use to show buyers what the finished houses will look like. Isabella studied the footage more closely. Those are beautiful homes, Dad. Really beautiful. The craftsmanship looks incredible. Miguel felt a small glow of pride. It had been so long since Isabella had shown genuine interest in his work. Would you like to see them? I mean, in person? Really? You'd show me? If you want. We're actually going back today to fix a few finishing touches before the grand opening next week. An hour later, they were driving through the development in Miguel's pickup truck. Isabella was quiet, taking in the neat rows of houses in various stages of completion. Some were nearly finished, with landscaped yards and driveways. Others were still just frames and foundations. It's like a whole community, she said finally. That's the idea. These will be homes for young families, mostly. First-time buyers who've been saving up for years to have a place of their own. Miguel parked in front of one of the completed model homes, a 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch and flower boxes under the windows. This is the one Daniel and I built, he said. Want to go inside? The house was beautiful in its simplicity. Hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, a kitchen designed for family dinners and homework sessions. Isabella walked through each room slowly, running her hands along surfaces, examining the details. Dad, this is amazing. The attention to detail, the way everything fits together. It's like a work of art. Miguel watched her face light up as she explored the house, and he was reminded of the little girl who used to build elaborate structures, with blocks, always insisting that every piece had to be perfect. You know what the best part is? He said, leading her to a window that overlooked the backyard. In a few months there will be a family living here. Kids running around that yard, maybe a dog. Parents sitting on that porch in the evenings talking about their day. We built the place where their memories will happen. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, then said, I never thought about it that way. I always just saw the buildings, not the lives that would fill them. That's the difference between construction and building, Miguel said. Construction is about materials and blueprints. Building is about dreams and futures. They walked through the rest of the house, Miguel explaining various aspects of the construction process. Isabella asked thoughtful questions, genuinely engaged in a way she hadn't been about his work in years. Dad, she said as they prepared to leave, would you teach me? Teach you what? This building. I don't mean professionally, but I want to understand what you do. Really understand it. I spent so many years focused on climbing the corporate ladder that I never learned about the foundation that made it possible for me to climb at all. Miguel looked at his daughter, really looked at her. She was wearing jeans and sneakers instead of her usual business attire, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked relaxed and curious and present in a way he hadn't seen in years. Are you sure? It's hard work and it gets dirty. Dad, I think I need a little dirt in my life right now. Over the next few weeks, Isabella began spending her weekends at job sites with Miguel and Daniel. At first, she could only help with simple tasks, holding tools, carrying materials, cleaning up debris. But she was eager to learn, asking constant questions and taking notes in a small notebook she'd bought specifically for this purpose. Daniel warmed to her immediately, delighted to have an audience for his stories and opinions about construction techniques. He began teaching her to read blueprints, explaining the difference between load-bearing walls and partitions, showing her how to use various tools. Your daughter has good hands. He told Miguel one afternoon while Isabella was practicing measuring and marking boards. She's careful, pays attention to detail. She could be good at this if she wanted to. Miguel watched Isabella work. Her tongue poking out slightly in concentration, the way it used to when she was doing homework. She traded her expensive work clothes for jeans and work boots, and her manicured nails were now short and practical. But the biggest change wasn't in how she looked, it was in how she carried herself. The nervous energy that had defined her in recent years was gone, replaced by a sense of purpose and calm he hadn't seen since she was a child. One Saturday, they were working on a kitchen renovation for an elderly couple, the Garcias, who had lived in their house for 40 years but needed accessibility modifications. Isabella was helping Miguel install grab bars in the bathroom when Mrs. Garcia appeared with a tray of lemonade and cookies. "You must be Miguel's daughter," she said warmly. "He talks about you all the time. He's so proud of you." Isabella glanced at Miguel, who was focused intently on ensuring the grab bar was level. "He talks about me." "Oh, yes, always. My Isabella this, my Isabella that. He showed us the newspaper article about your promotion. We have it on our refrigerator right next to the one about our grandson making the honor roll." After Mrs. Garcia left, Isabella was quiet for several minutes, carefully sanding a piece of trim that didn't really need more attention. "You really talk about me to your clients?" she asked finally. Miguel looked up from his work. "Of course I do. You're my daughter. I'm proud of you. Even after everything. Even when I was being awful." "Isabella, you were never awful. You were confused, maybe. Scared, definitely. But never awful." He set down his tools and looked at her directly. "Do you know what I told Mrs. Garcia when she asked about you last month?" Isabella shook her head. "I told her that my daughter was the smartest, most determined person I knew. That she worked harder than anyone had a right to expect from someone so young. And that even when she was going through a difficult time, I knew she'd find her way back to who she really was." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "How did you know?" "Because I raised you. Because your mother and I built something strong enough to weather any storm. You might forget sometimes, but the foundation is always there." That afternoon, Mr. Garcia asked Isabella about her work at Pinnacle Communications. She found herself explaining not just what she did, but why it mattered, how marketing could help small businesses reach customers, how the right strategy could make the difference between success and failure for families trying to build something of their own. "You know," Mr. Garcia said thoughtfully, "my nephew Ricardo has a landscaping business. Good worker, honest prices. But he doesn't know how to get the word out. People don't know to call him." Isabella leaned forward, interested. "What kind of landscaping does he do?" "Everything. Residential, small commercial jobs. He's been doing it for 10 years, mostly through word of mouth. But he wants to grow." "Has he ever worked on any of Dad's construction sites? Maybe for final landscaping on new builds?" Miguel looked up from where he was installing cabinet hardware. "Actually, yes. Ricardo did the landscaping for 3 houses in the Meadowbrook development. Beautiful work." Isabella's mind began working, seeing connections and possibilities. "Dad, could I meet with Ricardo? I have some ideas about how he could expand his business. Maybe partner with construction companies for regular landscaping. Contracts. You want to help him with marketing? I want to help him grow his business. There's a difference." Miguel smiled, recognizing his daughter's entrepreneurial spirit. The same drive that had pushed her through college and into her corporate success, but now focused on helping rather than climbing. 2 months after the broken engagement, Isabella knocked on Miguel's door holding a bottle of wine and a folder full of papers. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders, and she looked more relaxed than Miguel had seen her in years. "I have something to tell you," she said as Miguel opened the wine. "And something to ask you." They settled at the kitchen table, the same scarred oak surface that had witnessed 32 years of homework, heart-to-heart talks and shared meals. "I quit my job," Isabella announced. Miguel nearly choked on his wine. "What?" "Well, technically I gave my notice. 2 weeks, very professional, very cordial." She grinned at his expression. "Don't look so worried, Dad. I have a plan." She opened her folder and spread out several documents. Business licenses, incorporation papers, marketing materials, and what looked like a business plan. Asterisk. "I'm starting my own consulting firm. Navarro Communications. I'm going to specialize in helping small businesses, real businesses run by real people with real dreams, build their brands and reach their customers." Miguel examined the papers, recognizing the same meticulous attention to detail Isabella had always applied to everything she cared about. The business plan was thorough, the marketing materials were professional but warm, and the financial projections looked realistic. "This is incredible, Mia. But are you sure? Corporate jobs have security, benefits, and corporate jobs also have bosses who care more about profit margins than people. I'm tired of helping rich companies get richer while small businesses struggle to be heard." She pointed to a list of potential clients. "Look at this. Ricardo Mendoza's landscaping business, Mrs. Chin's alterations shop. The Hendersons want to start a catering business. These are the people who built our community, who gave us opportunities when we needed them. Now I want to give back." Miguel felt pride swelling in his chest. This was the daughter he remembered, the one who used to say she wanted to help people, who used to plan elaborate fundraisers for her school's charity drives. "There's something else," Isabella continued. "I was wondering, would you be my first official client?" "What do you mean?" "Alvarez Construction deserves better marketing than word of mouth and business cards from 1995. You and Daniel do incredible work, but people don't know about you unless they happen to stumble across a job site. I want to change that." She pulled out a mock-up of a website design. The homepage featured a photo of Miguel and Daniel in their work clothes, standing in front of one of the houses they'd built. The tagline read, "Building dreams, one family at a time." "Isabella, I can't afford Dad. Stop. This isn't charity. This is business. A good marketing strategy will bring you more clients, which means more revenue. And I'm not charging you my full rate anyway family discount." Miguel studied the website design. It was professional but warm, highlighting their craftsmanship, without making them sound pretentious. There were sections for their specialties: home renovations, accessibility modifications, new construction, and a gallery of their work that made their projects look impressive without being intimidating. What would this involve? First, we update all your marketing materials. New business cards, a real website, maybe some social media presence. Then we develop relationships with realtors, interior designers, other professionals who work with homeowners. We get you into the Chamber of Commerce, maybe sponsor some community events. Miguel was quiet for a moment, thinking, "Your mother always said I undercharge for my work." Mum was right. "You do incredible work, Dad, but you've never learned to sell yourself. That's where I come in. And you really want to do this work with your old man." Isabella reached across the table and took his hand. "Dad, I spent so many years trying to climb above where I came from that I forgot the most important lesson you ever taught me." "What's that?" "That the best work, the work that really matters, is the work you do for people you love, in places that feel like home, with your hands and your heart, not just your head. Miguel looked at his daughter, seeing not the corporate executive who had been embarrassed by her family, but the little girl who used to bring him drawings of buildings they would construct together someday. "Okay," he said, "but I have one condition." "What?" "Promise me that no matter how successful this business becomes, you'll never be ashamed of where you started. Because this table, this apartment, this life we built together, it's not something to overcome. It's something to honor." Isabella squeezed his hand. "I promise, Dad. I'm sorry it took me so long to remember that." Over the next few months, Navarro Communications grew steadily. Isabella worked out of a small office downtown, spending her days helping small business owners develop marketing strategies, create websites, and build customer relationships. Word spread quickly, the tight-knit network of local entrepreneurs. Ricardo Mendoza was her second client after Miguel, and within 6 months, his landscaping business had doubled. Mrs. Chun's alterations shop began attracting customers from across the city. The Hendersons launched their catering business with a social media campaign that had them booked solid within weeks. Isabella's favorite client remained Alvarez Construction. She accompanied Miguel and Daniel to meetings with potential customers, translating their expertise into language that homeowners could understand. She created a portfolio that showcased their work beautifully, highlighting not just the finished projects but the care and craftsmanship that went into every detail. "You know what the best part is?" Daniel told Miguel one afternoon as they watched Isabella explained their renovation process to a young couple looking to update their kitchen. "She doesn't just sell our work. She believes in it." Miguel nodded, watching his daughter discuss the importance of proper insulation and quality materials with the same passion she once reserved for corporate presentations. She was wearing work boots and jeans, her hair pulled back practically, and she looked completely at home. The young couple, Sofia Delgado and her husband, asked detailed questions about timelines and budgets. Isabella answered each one thoughtfully, never pressuring them, but always focusing on what would be best for their family's needs. "We'll need to think about it," Sofia said finally. "Of course," Isabella replied. "This is a big decision. Take all the time you need. And please, call if you have any other questions. We want you to feel completely comfortable with whatever you decide." After the couple left, Miguel turned to his daughter with a questioning look. "What?" Isabella asked. 6 months ago, you would have been pushing for a signature today." Isabella considered this. 6 months ago, I was selling products. Now I'm building relationships. There's a difference. And you learned that from ... She smiled. "From a construction worker who taught me that the best things are built slowly, with patience and care, and that shortcuts always show up later as problems." Miguel laughed. "I never said any of that. You didn't have to. You lived it." A year after Isabella started Navarro Communications, Miguel received an unexpected phone call at work. It was Sofia Delgado, the young woman who had ultimately hired them for her kitchen renovation 6 months earlier. "Mr. Alvarez, I hope I'm not bothering you, but I wanted to ask a favor." "Of course, Sofia. What can I do for you?" "Well, my sister Lucia is getting married next month, and she's been struggling to find the right person to help with the wedding planning and coordination. I know Isabella runs a marketing business, but I wondered ... Does she do any event planning?" Miguel smiled. Isabella had been branching out, helping clients with all sorts of communication needs beyond traditional marketing. She'd organized a grand opening for a new restaurant, coordinated a charity fundraiser for the local animal shelter, and even helped plan a retirement party for one of Daniel's former colleagues. "Let me ask her and have her call you," Miguel said. That evening, Isabella and Miguel were having dinner at his apartment, a weekly tradition they'd started when Isabella launched her business when he mentioned Sophia's call. A wedding? Isabella looked intrigued. I've never planned a wedding, but I've organized plenty of events. How big are we talking? Small, I think. But Miguel, there's something else Sophia mentioned. Lucia is marrying someone from a very different background. He's from a wealthy family. Very traditional. Very formal. Sophia was worried that Lucia might be feeling pressure to change things about herself to fit in. Isabella set down her fork, a shadow crossing her face. Change things how? Sophia didn't say exactly. That she mentioned that Lucia has been stressed about the wedding planning, worried about making sure everything meets her fiancé's family's expectations. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, then said, "Have Sophia give Lucia my number. I'd like to talk to her." 3 days later, Isabella met Lucia Ramirez at a coffee shop downtown. Lucia was clearly nervous, fidgeting with her engagement ring, and speaking in careful, formal language that seemed practiced rather than natural. "My fiancé's family is very traditional," Lucia explained. "They have specific ideas about how weddings should be conducted, what's appropriate, what kind of impression we need to make." Isabella listened carefully, recognizing the careful distance in Lucia's voice, the same tone she'd once used when talking about Jonathan's family. "What kind of wedding do you want?" Isabella asked. "I want ... Lucia stopped, looking confused by the question. "I want what's best for our future together." "That's not what I asked. I asked what kind of wedding you want. If you could plan your perfect day, what would it look like?" Lucia's formal composure cracked slightly. "I used to dream about getting married at my church, the one where I made my first communion. I wanted mariachi music and my grandmother's tamales and dancing until midnight. I wanted all my cousins there, all the kids running around, everyone laughing and celebrating together. And now? Now we're having the ceremony at the Presbyterian church where Alejandro's family attends. The reception is at the country club. Classical music, seated dinner, very elegant and proper." She twisted her ring again. "It's beautiful, really. Just not ... mine." Isabella reached across the table and covered Lucia's hand with her own. "Lucia, can I tell you something? A year ago, I was engaged to a man whose family had very strong opinions about what kind of person I should be. They wanted me to sign papers promising to distance myself from anything that didn't fit their image of the perfect wife. And I almost did it because I thought that's what love meant, changing yourself to be what someone else needed." Lucia looked up with recognition in her eyes. "But then I realized something. The people who truly love you don't want you to change. They love you because of who you are, including where you come from and what matters to you. And if someone can't love your grandmother's tamales, they can't really love you." "But Alejandro's family. Does Alejandro love your grandmother's tamales?" Lucia smiled for the first time since sitting down. "He says they're better than anything his mother's caterer has ever made." "Then maybe the problem isn't with Alejandro. Maybe it's with letting other people's expectations override your own happiness." They talked for 2 hours, Isabella helping Lucia sort through what she truly wanted versus what she thought she should want. By the end of their conversation, they'd outlined a wedding that honored both families' traditions while staying true to what Lucia and Alejandro actually wanted for their day. 2 weeks later, Isabella was coordinating the most joyful wedding she'd ever experienced. The ceremony took place at Lucia's childhood church, with readings in both English and Spanish. The reception was held at a community center that Lucia's family had been using for celebrations for decades, decorated with flowers from Ricardo Mendoza's nursery and catered by a local restaurant that specialized in authentic Mexican cuisine. Alejandro's family initially seemed uncomfortable, But Isabella watched them gradually relax as they were welcomed into the warmth and joy of Lucia's extended family. Alejandro's grandmother spent most of the evening dancing with Lucia's cousins, and his father had an animated conversation with Lucia's uncle about their shared love of fishing. Miguel attended as Isabella's guest, wearing his best suit and beaming with pride as he watched his daughter coordinate every detail with grace and efficiency. During the mariachi performance, he saw her wiping away tears of joy. "What are you thinking about?" he asked during a quiet moment. "I'm thinking about how different this could have been if Lucia had made the same mistake I almost made," Isabella said. "If she'd chosen to hide who she was, instead of finding someone who loved all of her." "And I'm thinking," Miguel said, "about how proud your mother would be to see you helping other people choose love over fear." As the evening wound down, and the last of the guests were heading home, Lucia approached Isabella with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. "This was perfect. It was exactly what we wanted, and Alejandro's family loved it. But more than that, it felt like us. Like our real beginning." Isabella hugged her tightly. "That's what weddings should be. Not performances for other people, but celebrations of who you really are and what you're building together." 6 months later, Isabella stood on the front porch of a house that Miguel and Daniel had just finished building. It was a modest 2-bedroom home for a young teacher and her husband, built with the same care and attention to detail that Miguel brought to every project. The new homeowners, Camila Serrano and her husband, were doing a final walkthrough before closing, marveling at the craftsmanship and thoughtful design details. "The built-in bookshelves are perfect," Camila said, running her hands along the smooth wood. "And the kitchen island is exactly the right size for our space." Miguel beamed with pride. After a year of working with Isabella on marketing, Alvarez Construction had more clients than they could handle. They'd hired 2 additional crew members and were booked solid through the following year. But more important than the business success was the relationship he'd rebuilt with his daughter. Isabella had kept her word about honoring where she came from. Her office walls were decorated with photos from job sites, and she regularly brought potential clients to see Miguel and Daniel's work in progress. "Dad," Isabella said as they watched Camila and her husband explore their new home, "I have something to tell you." Miguel looked at her expectantly. "I've been seeing someone." Miguel raised an eyebrow. This was the first he'd heard of any romantic interest since the disaster with Jonathan. "His name is Javier Castillo. He's a teacher at the elementary school where we did that accessibility renovation last month. He was there one day when I was taking photos for the portfolio, and we started talking. And when I told him I was Miguel Alvarez's daughter, he said, 'The contractor who donated his time to build the new playground equipment. Your dad's a legend around here.'" Miguel felt a familiar glow of pride, but also something deeper relief that his daughter had found someone who already knew his worth. "We've been taking things slow," Isabella continued. "Really slow. Learning about each other, meeting each other's families, making sure we're building something real." "And how does he feel about tamales and mariachi music?" Isabella laughed. "He grew up in a family that owns a restaurant. He's teaching me to make mole from his grandmother's recipe." "When do I meet him?" "Actually, that's the other thing I wanted to ask you. Would you mind if he came to Sunday dinner this week? I know it's your and my time, but—" "Isabella," Miguel interrupted gently, "I would love to meet him. And I'm proud of you for taking your time, for learning from what happened before. I'm learning from what you taught me before. I just forgot for a while." As they drove back to Miguel's apartment that evening, Isabella pointed to a building under construction. "Downtown. Isn't that the new community center project?" "Yeah. We're doing the foundation work." It's going to be beautiful when it's finished space for classes, community meetings, events. A place for families to gather. Isabella studied the construction site, seeing it with new eyes. You know what I love about your work, Dad? You don't just build buildings. You build the spaces where life happens, where communities come together. Miguel nodded, thinking about all the foundations he'd poured over the years, all the structures that had grown from those solid beginnings. That's what I learned from you, actually, Isabella continued. In business, in relationships, in life, everything has to start with a strong foundation. You can't build something lasting on shaky ground. And what's your foundation, Maya? Isabella smiled, looking at her father with the same adoration she'd shown in childhood photos, but tempered now with adult understanding and gratitude. Family, community, the knowledge that I'm loved for exactly who I am, not who I might become. The understanding that success means lifting others up, not climbing over them. She paused. The confidence that comes from being Miguel Alvarez's daughter. Miguel felt tears prick his eyes. Your mother would be so proud of you. I know, because she helped you build the foundation that made all of this possible. As they pulled into Miguel's parking space, Isabella's phone buzzed with a text from Javier. Asterisk. How did the house showing go? Can't wait to hear all about it at dinner Sunday. Bringing ingredients for tres leches cake if that's okay. Asterisk Isabella showed Miguel the message. He wants to bring dessert. I like him already, Miguel said. That Sunday, Javier Castillo arrived at Miguel's apartment carrying flowers for Isabella, a bottle of wine for Miguel, and a bag full of ingredients for dessert. He was exactly the kind of man Miguel had always hoped his daughter would find: kind, genuine, interested in her stories about work and family, respectful but not formal. During dinner, Javier asked Miguel about his projects, listened with genuine interest to stories about construction challenges and solutions, and shared his own stories about teaching and working with kids from the same neighborhoods where Miguel had built homes. You know, Javier said, as they lingered over coffee and the tres leches cake he'd made from scratch, my students are always excited when they see construction happening in the neighborhood. They love watching buildings grow from nothing into something real. I tell them it's like watching dreams take shape. Isabella reached for Miguel's hand across the table. That's exactly what my dad does. He builds dreams. Later, as they said their goodbyes, Javier shook Miguel's hand warmly. Thank you for raising such an incredible daughter, Mr. Alvarez. Isabella talks about you all the time. And I can see why. It's clear she learned her strength and her values from you. After Javier and Isabella left together, Miguel sat at his kitchen table, looking at the family photos on his refrigerator. The newest addition was from Lucia's wedding. Isabella, laughing as she danced with Ricardo Mendoza's youngest son, her hair loose and her face radiant with joy. His phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. Asterisk. Thank you for tonight, Dad. For liking. Javier. For being proud of who I've become. For never giving up on us, even when I made it hard to love me. Miguel typed back. It was never hard to love you, Mia. Love doesn't require perfection. It just requires showing up. Asterisk. Her response came quickly. Asterisk. Good thing. Because I'm still figuring things out. But at least now I know I'm building on solid ground. Asterisk. Miguel smiled and turned off the lights, thinking about foundations and the structures they support. He'd spent his career building physical foundations, concrete and steel that could hold up houses and office buildings and community centers. But his greatest achievement had been building the emotional foundation that had allowed his daughter to weather any storm and find her way back to herself. Outside his window, the city stretched out in all directions, full of buildings he'd helped construct, families living in homes he'd made possible, communities gathering in spaces he'd helped create. And somewhere out there, his daughter was building her own life slowly, carefully, with the patience and attention to detail he taught her. The foundation he'd laid 32 years ago was still holding strong, supporting not just Isabella's life but the lives of everyone she touched through her work, her relationships, her commitment to lifting others up. In construction, Miguel had learned that the foundation was the most important part of any structure. It had to be built to last, designed to weather any storm, strong enough to support whatever was built on top of it. Looking at the photos of his daughter, the successful businesswoman, the loving partner, the community member who used her skills to help others, Miguel knew he'd built something that would last. Not just a building or even a business, but a legacy of love, strength, and service that would continue growing long after he was gone. The distance that had once existed between them was gone, replaced by a bridge built on understanding, forgiveness, and the unshakable foundation of a father's love. And that bridge would hold, Miguel knew, through whatever storms might come, because the best foundations always do.